Okay, one, two, three. Hi, friends. My name is Sophia Booker, and today I will be talking about poetry. So, for me, poetry is such an awesome outlet. It is something that I'm able to use to really get my thoughts down on paper. It's been something that I've been using to get through this pandemic. And whatever your thing is, as far as like art, just tap into that, especially during this time, because we just have so many things going on. And art is such an awesome outlet to kind of get your thoughts down on paper or to really express yourself in a way that's creative and bold. And um, art is also a way for you to kind of be raw with your emotions as well. So I really think that within the arts, poetry is really important, especially for me, just because I feel like that I'm able to get what I need to get out. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on in this world, and we just, we need that outlet, we need that space. So I encourage everybody to really like tap into the arts during this time. It's a way to escape. So whether you like drawing or singing or dancing, really tap into that, because it's a way for you to feel very just it's a way for you to just relax and to let some things off your chest and get some things out of your head. So I would say all of that just to say that art is great, poetry is amazing, and I'll talk about later how I really got into poetry. But before I do that, I do want to give a little bit of background on myself. I'm in school for my master's in social work at VCU. So that is super exciting. I'm scheduled to graduate next year. And I'm also working with older youth in foster care, helping them transition successfully to adulthood. And that the work that I do is so important just because I have my own lived experience in foster care. So it's kind of like full circle for me. And it's a very rewarding job, to say the least. It's really awesome. And so I really enjoy it because I'm able to activate my passion, which is advocacy and really within youth voice and youth engagement. Like that's my thing. I'm all for that. And I have done a lot of advocacy work in the past. And more recently, I have been doing some advocacy work around social justice because I have experience with that. And I also have experience with mental health and foster care. So I have advocated on policies on that too. So very rewarding job. I'm happy that I made it this far to get into my passion and really inspire others, but also help others, because that's my passion too. um, so with that being said, let's get into it. We're going to talk about poetry, and it's a great outlet, like I said. So first, I want to say, like, if you have any comments or any experience with poetry, feel free to post it in the chat. Post it in the comments, and just share your experience with us. And if you watch this later, you want to share like some things, you can also post it in the comments too. So poetry is amazing. Really, I got into poetry like it's not like really an epic story, right? Like I just really got into poetry just by creative writing. Um, and I feel like anybody can write poetry. Anybody can put thoughts down on paper, and it's really about how you want to make it. So it doesn't have to be this whole intense process. I literally fell into it because I wanted to write about my experiences. I wanted to get a lot of things that was going on in my head down on paper. Sometimes when I'm writing, I don't really like I don't really think about it too much. I just write. And I'll show you guys like some of the things that I have done. And I will also share a poem with you all today too. So let's get into it. And we're going to first just talk about like what poetry is. And it's, like I said, it's really a way for you to have like a structure in your poem, and the poem may have like some rhymes. It may has like a type of flow to it, and there's also like different types of poems as well. So I'm going to share my screen so I can show you what types of poems you can look into to see what fits for you or what's best for you. And let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully everyone can see that. So I just really Googled if you want to find out like what is poetry and find out more information about that, you could just pretty much Google it. But I'm going to scroll down to the 15 different types of poetic forms that you can have. So there's a lot on here, but some of the ones that stand out to me that's recognizable is the free verse. That's the one that I use just because it allows me to have more flexibility with my poems. We all like, if you know, obviously if you went to school, like if you're in high school, middle school, they talk about epics a lot, and we've read epics before, you know, like Beowulf, Macbeth, those poems. So those poems are pretty much like a really long story. So sometimes it kind of, when you're reading it, it kind of doesn't feel like a poem. Well, at least that's how I felt about it. It just felt like this really long story. But yeah, so we have some famous work within this topic or this type of poem that you can write. You have narrative poetry, which pretty much tells a story as well. So you could get into that. Haikus, which are very, 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 very small poems. They're like literally 3 lines. So yeah, you can write those if you want. And some of the other ones too, sonnet. I remember sonnet. Sonnet is pretty much a 14-line poem, and it's typically about love. So, I mean, there's so many different options. These are just a few examples of how you can write your poem, but really you can write your poetry in whatever style and way that you want to do that. So yeah, first I want to give some tips. And the first thing you should do when you're like really trying to figure out what you want to write is get yourself a journal. This is super helpful because, you know, you could get one either this small, or you also can get, or you can also have an app on your phone. So for instance, like I think they have like some apps on there like notepads, or you can use Google Docs, things like that. So you can use that stuff too. Like if you're not by your journal, you can also use a notepad app or anything on your phone to kind of write down your thoughts. This is easy because really you should, like, honestly, I wouldn't make like any rules or anything like I have to have like this line written out or things like that. The best way that I found writing poetry was for me to just write down my thoughts. And that could be anything. I could be driving from the store, and like a thought or a phrase or something would pop in my head. So I would either write it in my journal, or I will also write it like in an app on my phone, typically I use like I have a Samsung Galaxy, so they have like Galaxy or Samsung Notes or something like that, and so I write it in my notes. And you also have the option too, like if you're using your phone, most phones have this feature that you can have like a secured folder. So if somebody's on your phone and they're like, "Ooh, let me look through your notes," and then it's just like out there, you can actually set up a folder that's secured, and the only way you can get into that folder is by like typing in a password or a pin code or a pattern or something like that. So if you don't want like all your deep thoughts like just out there on your phone, set that up, because that's a good idea. And I do that because sometimes I think of stuff and then I'm like, oh, let me put this in a secure folder. So yeah, notebook is awesome to use. And shout out to my mentor that got this for me. She also got me a sketchbook because I like to draw. Oh, I should show y'all my sketchbook. I have another sketchbook that I just purchased. But this one is pretty cool because, oh, you can't, I guess, well, you can't really see it, but this one doesn't have lines on it. So you can pretty much, but it has like little faint dots that you can use. So yeah, you can use that and just really just write out thoughts. It could be like a word, it could be a phrase, it could be like, you know, a couple of lines here and there, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So that's like the first step. The second thing, get you a nice pen, because it's so cool when you have like a nice little pen and you're like, oh, this is my poetry notebook. I'm going to use this to write out my thoughts. It just feels, I don't know, that's just me. I have like a pen that's like a pen or two that's dedicated to like this journal right here. So yeah, use an awesome pen. It's whatever works for you. If you have like a pencil or something that you want to write with too, you could do that. But my second or third tip would be, like I said, just write. It doesn't matter like whatever thought come to mind. You can write your stuff in your notebook or in your notepad on your phone, and you could come back to it later. So I wouldn't like overthink it, because the flow will come later when you're like looking at it again. So what I typically do is I try to really like write down my thoughts, and then I'll come back to it later. So I sometimes use a Google Doc just because it's easier for me to like go back in at another time. On my phone, if I'm away from my notebook, or if I'm away from my laptop, I could go back on my phone and kind of write out what I wanted to say and change it up later. So I would do that too. And continue to comment in the chat or in the comments. I can't talk today. But continue to comment in the comments and tell us what you do to write out your poetry, or if you have some, you know, poetry that you want to share, or a title of your poems that you have, like you can post it in the comments as well. My last tip is to really, like, when you are writing, what I said earlier is really don't overthink it, because the flow is going to come later. But also, once you write out your poem, it's really helpful to read it out loud a few times. And I found that helpful because that actually helped me with my flow of how the poems went when I'm like writing them out. And it also helped me like figure out, okay, where's the rhythm within the poem? So if you really think about poetry and stuff, I associate poetry with music. Everybody likes music. Music is amazing, but literally music uses poetry. It's foundational. Like you listening to lyrics, you listen to how those lyrics are flowing together. They may have the use of rhyme in their lyrics. All of that is foundational poetry, and it just comes from that. So whenever you're listening to a song, just kind of think about like the flow of how it's going, and like the play on words, that's also foundational in poetry as well. And just think about like how the music is flowing, but just like think about how the words are sounding without the music too, because that also is taken in consideration too when they're trying to match beats up to the lyrics. And so whenever I'm doing my poetry or whatever, I'm reading what I wrote, I kind of read it out loud to see where the flow is or to see where the rhythms are, and kind of go with that. That's some of my tips. I'm not really a full expert in poetry. So like I said, like anybody can do it. Anybody can get into poetry. It's a really, just open yourself up, like be open-minded when you're in like doing writing your poetry, but also like reading it. And don't be afraid to share it with some people. I was that person at one point, but I did recently share some of the things that I wrote very recently at a couple of events last year and also this year. And I would like to share a poem with you today. So this poem was written a couple of months ago, and it was really around, I don't know, it was really around a lot of things that I was processing at the time. And it was something that was like near and dear to my heart, but it was also something that I wanted to be empowering. And it was very empowering once I shared it, because I was really nervous, and I'm kind of nervous right now. So don't judge me. But I will read my poem today. My poem is called, the poem that I will share with you today is called, What Do You See? And I will share this with you now. What do you see? I can't help but think that you see the things that I see. The oppression that's deeply rooted in our structures, the racism that won't buckle, yet still I stand. Some choose to fight, while others choose to stay silent, rather stay within their comfort zone and ignore what's happening. Must be nice. What do you see? Historical trauma, oppression, civil unrest. I don't like this. Why can't I just be me? Why can't I just live? What do you see? My reflection of myself excuse me, my vision of myself is reflected in society views, making it harder for me to choose whether to be authentic or to fuse. Hashtag assimilate, code switch. What do you see? Black women carry the world on their shoulders, but are often invisible in the process. Put armor on every day for battle, discrimination, expectations, protests, still teaching our sons, daughters, and communities on how to love and be their best. What do you see? Activate her beautiful superwoman powers, because she can't show her vulnerabilities. She has to stay strong, not just for herself, but for everyone else. What wonderful abilities. The Black woman is super indeed, but cries in silence as we turn on the TVs and watch our men, children, and women bleed. What do you see? Despite all the trauma, that's not what I see when I look in the mirror every day. Changing the narrative to say, I matter. Yes, that's right, I matter, as I continue to wait for the rest of the world to believe that too. They say the most disrespected person is the Black woman, but don't you dare disrespect yourself, queen. No matter what version of yourself you choose to show to to the world, you are a force, a flower that grows from the concrete. Step into the royalty that you are meant to be. The world's views has nothing on the goddess inside of you. Let your steps create a shining path for others. Excuse me. I gotta start over. Okay. I got so into it that I was like, "Ooh, yeah, this is good." Okay. Okay. I think I know how to edit this. I was like, dang, I really got into it. All right, I know how to edit this. I think I know how to edit it. What do you see? I can't help but think that you see the things that I see. The oppression that's deeply rooted in our structures, the racism that won't buckle, yet still I stand. Some choose to fight while others choose to stay silent. Rather stay within their comfort zone and ignore what's happening. Must be nice. What do you see? Historical trauma, oppression, civil unrest. I don't like this. Why can't I just be me? Why can't I just live? What do you see? My vision of myself is reflected in society views, making it harder for me to choose whether to be authentic or to fuse. Hashtag assimilate. Code switch. What do you see? Black women carry the world on their shoulders, but often are invisible in the process. Put armor on every day to prepare for battle, discrimination, expectations, protests, still teaching our sons, daughters, and communities on how to love and be their best. What do you see? Activate her beautiful superwoman powers because she can't show her vulnerabilities. She has to stay strong, not just for herself, but for everyone else. What wonderful abilities. The Black woman is super indeed, but cries in silence as we turn on the TV to watch our men, women, and children bleed. What do you see? Despite all the trauma, that's not what I see when I look in the mirror every day, changing the narrative to say I matter. Yes, that's right. I truly matter as I continue to wait for the rest of the world to believe that too. They say the most disrespected person is the Black woman, but don't you dare disrespect yourself, queen. No matter what version of yourself you show to the world, you are still a force, a flower that grows from the concrete. Step into the royalty that you are meant to be. The world's views has nothing on the goddess inside of you. Let your steps create a shining path for others to pave the way to be themselves. Let your steps lay the groundwork society continues to hide from itself. The harder we step, the harder the walls will fall, crumble into acceptance that all people are created equal. This 400-year journey will end, but we have to continue to fight through our voices, art, and action until we win. Know your truth, be strong, your ancestors will carry you on. Baby girl, hold your head up high like the queen that you are and never fall from the stars because you are a true gem. Unapologetically Black, bold, beautiful royalty. That's who you are, signed by me. Now what do you see? Thank you. So yeah, that was my poem that I read a few months ago, and it was definitely nerve-wracking. And it also showed like a side of me that I don't really show a lot to people. So that was also like super empowering. And so I encourage everybody that's watching to like really don't be fearful about poetry, because it's what you make it. And whatever things that you want people to feel from your poetry, just go with it, because it's meant for you to tell your own story and share your own experiences. And it's a way for you to connect with people on a level that it's just different. It feels different when it's like, written in this format. It's written from you, from your heart, like from your soul. And if you feel what you are writing, and you feel it when you're like either performing it or sharing it with someone, I guarantee you everybody else is going to feel exactly what you're feeling. And that's the best thing about poetry, because it's what you make it. And it's what you want to show to people. It's what you want people to feel from your words. And that's why I like poetry. I don't really share my poetry a lot, but the last few months I've had an opportunity to share it with people, and I would just say that it was so inspiring, and it really helped me get more into it. And we have like a lot of young people that are out here doing this too. Like, of course, we had the inauguration, and we had Amanda Gorman say her poem and shared her poem with the world. And that also like kind of inspired me to get into it a little bit more. And so I encourage everybody to do that. I really appreciate your time. I'm so glad that you were able to watch this today. And I hope that you get into the poetry. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions on how to get started. It's super easy. All you need is a nice handy dandy notebook and an awesome pen, or whatever your favorite pen is. That's the best way I write my poetry. So have fun writing, and post in the comments if you ever like need help with getting started. And I hope to see you all soon.